Welcome everyone. Today we are going to talk about the weaponization of lies. How religion, especially the moral ones like Christianity, and Christianity will be the focus, use lies to manipulate us. Not only that, that's why I didn't call this the manipulation through lies. But lies are also a psychological mechanism that allows them to accept something that they would otherwise reject. Because, and this is the title of the episode, when it's convenient to them, they use lies, in this sense, the morality, as a form of attack or defense. But when it comes to them, to their narratives, to their beliefs, lies are never lies. They are always something else. And basically, because we are close to April's Fool, I decided to address this before the other episodes that already have been recorded. So let's get to it. Let's start by defining what it is. We all know what a lie is. But here's the thing. Because lies are weaponized by religion, we need to have a definition, at least most of us can agree with, to proceed. And what's better than the most superficial of things? Google. So what are lies? A lie is a false statement made intentionally to deceive or mislead, or a false impression created by someone. It serves as a noun for untrue statement, or a verb for speaking falsely. Synonyms include prevarication, falsification, fib, deception, fabrication, right? Which I use a lot. This is a fabrication. In other words, it's a lie. Fabrication means someone is constructing something. And it's not necessarily equivalent to what happened, to the truth. And then you have other things, look. You can check it out. We all know this. We all know what a lie is. But when it comes to religion, then it's different. Why? Because look, here I am, and in a way I'm talking against religion, in this case in particular, Christianity. It's undeniable. I'm not talking against what you believe, your faith. This is separate from the institutions, the religions. Although they pretend to be they are the same. There is a podcast where I talk about this, the relation between religion and faith. Check it out if you're interested. So what religion, the institution, the system does, especially the moral ones such as Christianity, is I can never tell you a lie. And let's use this example. I can never have the intent to deceive you, to mislead you, to create a false impression. Even in things that are unrelated to here. Let's imagine you ask me a question. Let's say, we have to create something here. Let's say that instead of my voice, which is a clear element to identify that I'm not a natural born speaker. So let's say I use AI. these voice overs from AI. And then someone asked, where are you from? And I said, oh, I'm from the United States. Oh, I'm from the UK. The moment it was discovered, I wasn't. I was using AI. That was hiding my own voice. That was not from this country. Everything will be about this. Even if it's completely unrelated to the religions, to what I talk about. Everything is, I lied. How can you trust someone who lies? He's a liar. He tells untruths. Untruths, right? It's a new term. He's deceiving. Everything would be about this. Whenever making an argument, they would say, but you're a liar. You all know this. This is how it happens. You've probably seen this already when talking about religion. I mean, even mistakes are possible for this. Right? But mistakes is separate because mistake is not intentional. Now lie, we can argue there is an intentionality behind it. There might not be malice in some cases, what people call white lies. Right? Might be simply for, I don't want to have to deal with this. Now, we're not lying to maliciously deceive someone. We're lying because we don't want to deal with the issue. We want to be over. That's an example. Even if I were to say, okay, lies are justifiable in some cases, the moralists would still use that against me. Because that's what lies are within religion. They are a weapon. And why do I say that? Because when it's applied to them, it never is the same thing. I've told people multiple times, you have verifiable lies in the Bible. Verifiable. You can show people, and we are going to do this in a bit, that the Bible lies. It's intentionally trying to deceive or mislead people, according to this definition. It's a false impression, it's a false statement. It's untrue. The Bible is filled with it. But whenever it comes to the Bible, and in some cases even the religious leaders, it's interpretation. You cannot take literally. It's a metaphor. It's allegory. It's a midrash. All lies. I mean, literally, saying those things are lying, but all those things, they are just trying to cover for lies. It's either literal or it isn't. It's the second and first podcasts I talk about. You have the literal approach, the scientific approach, and the abominable approach, which is the approach of religion. Why is it abominable? Precisely because you don't have an objective foundation. Precisely because they have to lie to us. Because without an objective foundation, the ones in charge determine what is acceptable and what isn't. People don't read the Bible. That's a fact. People read what we are told about the Bible. So you go to church, or you are raised in church, or you're being evangelized, proselytized by someone from church, and they tell things like, God is the only God. God is love. God cares about you. And then when you go and read the Bible, these elements, they infiltrate the text. So that's why when you hear people saying things like this, oh, it's a literary narrative from the time. Oh, it's a mythological, theological narrative. They're just repeating what they are told. Nobody thought about this. Look, let's go with myths, for instance. My definition of myth is very simple. A narrative constructed, fabricated to manipulate us. It's a lie. Myths are lies. Look how they don't agree with me at the same time they do. And this is AI, so this is an amalgamation, right? They merge sources and create a narrative. Here, what are myths? Myth is a traditional symbolic narrative, so far agreeing with me, often of unknown origin, that explains fundamental aspects of a culture, such as the creation of the world, natural phenomena, or religious belief. There are myths about the origins of a nation. There are myths about events, right? There are many sorts of myths. Why? Because myths are narratives. Someone constructs a narrative to deceive people, to control people, to manipulate people. And as people start believing these narratives and time passes, and most of society believes the narrative, then we call it myth. Otherwise, we just call a story. Like, I can create a myth right now, and it would be only a narrative. In 100 years, if people believed what I told you, what the story I created, the narrative I created, then it will become a myth. It's just a differentiation. But here, look how interesting this is. And you can read if you want. It's on the screen. Pause and take a look. But myth versus modern misconception. In common vernacular, myth is used for something untrue. Egypt, myth of flat earth. But in anthropology, its truthfulness is less important than the cultural function. Look how they don't deny it's a lie. They don't, because they can't. We all know it's not real. A myth is not descriptive history. It's not historical. It's a narrative. It's a story. Someone created the story with an objective. And most of the objectives are manipulation, deceit, lie, and control. And they don't deny it. Look, in modern vernacular, myth is used for something untrue. And then you have a but. You expect that the but will deny what's said before. But it's not like this. No, but look what comes after the but. But in anthropology, its truthfulness is less important than cultural function. It's telling us it's not true. It's telling us it lies. They just try to cover it with something that makes it look like it isn't. Even though they are obliged to say, because they can't, otherwise they will be overtly lying to everyone and easily disproven, they have to say in anthropology its truthfulness is less important. Look, no one ever says that a myth might not contain elements of reality, right? It's like to say, oh, the Bible is completely a lie. Nothing that is in the Bible. No, this is stupid. The Bible is a historical book in the sense that someone sat down and wrote something for an audience in a context. And this was preserved throughout history. This part of the Bible is historical. Discovering what was the intention of the author. What the author wanted to make the audience believe or how they want them to behave. What the context that made the narrative necessary. All those things are historical. All those things we want and try to investigate. That's what literal analysis does, literary analysis. But the story itself, the narrative itself, those are myths. Those are mostly lies. This is the difference. And look, if you go further in this area and you ask Google, are myths lies? The response is categorical. No, a myth is not a lie. You will see that when we talk about the examples, they never give a categorical response like this. They never go say yes or no. But here they say, no, myth is not a lie. And then, okay, let's see what they have to say. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's see if they'll be able to prove I'm wrong. While myths are often factually false. Like, come on! The very next half sentence, you are already saying they are lies. You start by saying, no, myths are not lies, and then the next sentence you already say, while myths are often factually false, lies. They try to deceive us with this because myths are useful, right? Myths are useful to manipulate and control us, which is the objective of religion. But not only religion, politics also use this. And this is why you see this relationship, symbiotic relationship, let's say, between religion and politics. Of course, religion is politics. But again, I will start from the beginning. No, a myth is not a lie. While myths are often factually false, they are symbolic narratives meant to explain profound truths, cultural values, and natural phenomena rather than to deceive. Their justification is they are factually false, but they are not lies because they don't try to deceive us. Of course they are. You only believe this if you don't take religion as politics, if you think religion is something else. So this is basically constructed to deceive religious people. This is the myth of myths. There we go. This is the myth of myth. It's a narrative created to try and make myth, which is a lie. Yes, they are meant to deceive us. Some of them are created through ignorance. No doubt about this. They didn't understand the world. So they try to explain the world, right? And they try to use they created these narratives, these false narratives. So you could argue that we should make the distinction between a false narrative and a lie. The thing is, religion knows this, and they operate the myths as if they were truth. That's why myths are lies. And then continue. Lies are intentional deceptions, whereas myths are metaphors that often incite human experience, psyche, and history. This is if you assume there is no intention on the people writing this. When you take the Bible, for instance, most of these myths were created after the Babylonian exile by a small percentage of society, a small percentage of the religious leadership, the priests that returned from the exile. They wanted to change the religion, which was polytheistic and polylatric, worshiping multiple gods because you believe in multiple gods. They want to turn into polytheistic and monolatric. You believe multiple gods are real, but you are only allowed to worship one. So they created these myths, these narratives, for that objective. In this case, in the case of the Bible, the myths are intentional deceptions. Now, what happened there could have happened in other religions. Yeah, then we would have to analyze religion for religion. Still, they are not factual. This we can all agree, right? Myths are not factual. They agree with this here. Now, if they are lies or not, we would have to analyze religion by religion, or myth by myth. Fair. I can concede on this point. The thing is, I already know about the result in Christianity and Judaism at least. And in those two religions, the myths, most of them, if not all, were created with the clear intention to mislead people, to deceive people. Now, if you want to agree with me, it depends on you. But what you should do is investigate for yourself. It's not going to go as you want it to go. I mean, if you only search, for instance, the books your pastor tells you, come on. But if you investigate for yourself, even paying attention to these little changes, then you get a different outcome. See, it's because, look, it's all because they separate. Myths provide meaning and structure cultural worldview. lies are designed to mislead for personal advantage. Yes, what the common element to all religions? Come on, think. What all religions have in common? Not all religions have gods, so it's not that. They all have priests. They all have someone who gets a benefit from the religion. Sometimes this someone becomes an institution, a group of people, the religion itself. All of them have this. So, the initial part might not be unrelated. The first part, the myths provide the meaning and structure, is not necessarily unrelated, and I will argue they are used because of it to the second part. Lies are designed to mislead for a personal advantage. And who is taking the personal advantage? The priests. The priests always have advantages. Look at our history in the West. How would we study? I remember this from high school, the pyramid, right? The top, the nobles. Under the nobles, the priesthood. Under the priesthood, everyone else. Guys, this is not by coincidence. Myths are generally considered symbolically or metaphorically true. Like, what the hell is this? Are they true or not? Are they real or not? Symbolically or metaphorically true. Get the hell out. Even if they are literally or historically false. The defenders of myth usually are defenders of religion. This is why you see this mess that myths is, where they try to justify what something that's not real, which is created by someone. It's not a lie. And they here's the thing, they put them all together. You see, there is no nuance in what they are saying. I started by saying that myths are lies. Then I even considered maybe you can separate lies from falsehood. But you see that they don't present it that way. For them it's completely separate. Why, might you wonder? Who is taking a personal advantage for this idea of myths? Which, by the way, there isn't one idea of myth. If you're going to search, every author comes to a different idea. It's incredible. I would rather go to the most simple one. Myths are narratives constructed to manipulate, deceive, and lie to us. Oh, they try to explain a profound reality. Yeah, is that reality true? No. Then might be short-sighted. It might be. I don't think it is. I think it's more real than this mumbo jumbo here, where they apparently don't know what it's something it's real or something that's false. And something that's false is real. Even though it's false. It's like, come on. Here, again, myths are generally considered symbolically or metaphorically true, whatever the hell that means, even if they are literally or historically false. Like, what the hell are they saying here? What is symbolically or metaphorically true? At the same time, it is literally or historically false. This is to justify, at least when it comes to religion, why a text, for instance in the Bible, pretends to be historical, is telling us something, oh, this happened, look how these things happened, and creates a narrative to tell us how it happened. But because we have ways to investigate, we can find if it's really real, if it really happened. And when we do investigate, and we're going to see that in a bit in the examples, and it doesn't match, then you have this, oh, okay, so the author of the Bible here is lying to us? No. See, they can never accept the Bible is lying. Never. Because the moment the Bible lies, it puts into question everything. God himself. That's why I say, Studying the Bible, literary analysis, destroy God. Because you go and you find the truth behind the myths. This here is all to deceive us. This kind of discourse. Because they are trying to still operate the myths. They're still trying to make the myths useful. The thing is, the moment you investigate the myths, you realize what's behind it. That's why I say myths are lies. All you have to do is investigate a myth. Literary analysis, exegesis, destroyed Christianity. Destroyed it completely. They went at the myths and then they found they were lies. But that doesn't mean people accept reality. They are trained to believe everything in the Bible is the truth, even if it's metaphorically or symbolically true, whatever the hell that means. So they treat everything as reality, one way or the other, and when you point out it's a lie, it's almost impossible for you to accept. Because the consequence of this is, okay, if your author lied here, what else did he say that was a lie? And then everything starts crumbling. See, the word myth comes from the Greek mythos, meaning story, and it historically refers to narratives meant to convey deep truths rather than create falsehood. We are going behind the intentions here. And we are assuming that people in the past were just creating stories to transmit the truths. Right? Like they were pure humans that had no intention of creating falsehoods. Even they believed what they were saying. So that should justify it. The thing is, you can't study the text. At least when it comes to the Bible. The moment you start studying, you see, yeah, they are creating falsehoods. Myths hold power through shared belief and cultural significance, explain how and why things are, whereas lies lose power once exposed. Yes, so do myths. Myths also lose power when they expose. Why? Because let's take this explanation for example. They hold power to shared belief and cultural significance. What the hell does that mean? Just because people believe the myth? Yes, I mean, that's true. But again, that's nothing to do with reality. People can't believe lies. You see that today. So the conflation of different things here is incredible. And then say, explaining how and why things are. Well, whereas lies, they lose power once exposed. So do myths. So myths try to explain how the earth came to be, let's say. It's not, but it's how people believe. How the earth came to be. And then they give an explanation. Only a small percentage of people still believe that myth. Most people don't believe the earth is 6,000 years old. Why? Because now we know why the earth was formed. At least we have an idea. About that, about many other things. So myths, they lose power. Why then the appearance that they don't? Well, because they're operated by religion. So religion is constantly tweaking them, changing them. And religion often discards them. So you don't see the Catholic Church, for instance, the Baptist Church, the Lutheran Church, these big parts of Christianity, preaching that the earth is 6,000 years old. They shut the hell up. They're smart, guys. They know. So they shut up, they don't say anything, and they pretend it's never there. They pretend the myth isn't real. Now, before we move to the examples, let's ask one more question and see what the AI will give us. Are myths historical? Factual? Let's see. Because this is the contention, right? Myths are generally not considered literally or factually historical. Literally, right? Not literally. But rather symbolic narratives that convey cultural, psychological, and moral truths. Moral truths might... Really? Moral truths. Go read the myths, the moral myths of the Bible. See how moral those myths were. So no, it's not moral truth. They are imposed truths. All these things here, they need an institution, religion, to impose them. Otherwise, nobody believes them. You only believe because you are in the system. If you are outside the system, you don't believe. So moral truths, they pick the morality of today. Most of it happened in spite of religion, basically fighting religion, and then they go and then try to impose it anachronically, basically pick something that didn't exist in the past, only exists in the present, pick in the present and toss all the way to the past and pretend it exists there. There is no individual rights in the past, guys. There's no free speech. There's no free expression. There's no equality. Many of the values we hold today, that they love to say Christian values, they are not. But at least we have it here. Myths are not historically factual. And let's see a few examples how these myths behave within Christianity. Now, let's start with one of my favorite ones, which is the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew 1. So you open the New Testament, is the first text you see. It's not the first book in the New Testament. The first book is considered to be Mark. But in the order of the canon, Matthew is the first. And look how it starts. Matthew 1, the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah. And look how the text tells us. This is NIV. Right, there are other versions, but it's basically the same thing. This is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, son of David, the son of Abraham. Let's check, for instance, Amplified Bible. The record of the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son, descendant of David, the son, descendant of Abraham. American Standard Version. The book of the generation of Jesus, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Contemporary Standard Bible. An account of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. You see, all of them start by saying this is an account. This is the book. This is the record. This is the genealogy. They all present it as if it's true, as if it's real, as if it's factual. All you have to do is ask biased Google. It's always biased in favor of religion because the sources are most religious. A lot of the academic sources are closed behind paywalls, and I don't think these AIs access it. So they access most things online. Look, Summit Christian Fellowship. Bart Ehrman blog. And here's basically a note, right? So it's mostly religious sources. And this is what you get. Even being religious sources, the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew 1-17 is primarily a theological construct, rather than a modern, exhaustive, historical pedigree designed to prove Jesus as the promised Messiah. Look, you see how they are not categorical? My question was, is the genealogy of Jesus historical factual? When I asked about myths, they said, no, myths are not lies. Here they didn't say, no, it's not historical. Look at how roundabout we have to read, to go, to understand they are not historical. It's primarily a theological construct, a myth. It's a narrative. They constructed the narrative and people believe, rather than a modern, exhaustive historical pedigree, like them being factual or historical. So what was the objective? Here's what the interesting part is. They tell us everything We just need to know how to read. Look, designed to prove Jesus as the promised Messiah. When we were talking about lies, what did they tell us? The lies were designed to deceive us? Here you go. So it's not designed to give us the historical genealogy of Jesus. It's designed to prove Jesus as the promised Messiah. Does that mean he is the promised Messiah? We don't know. The whole thing is a lie. They are telling us the whole thing is a theological construct. It's a myth with one specific design by the author. You only assume this as true if you believe it. Here, while likely incorporate historical names, Matthew curated, edited, and structured the genealogy, skipping generations to create 314 structures to emphasize Jesus' royal, legal right to the throne of David. A myth, a narrative created to, in their words, prove Jesus to be real. In my words, to manipulate, deceive, and lie to us. And then you can read the thing, pause and see here. Because whenever you ask this for Google, they change it because they might check other sources. The structure is similar, the response is similar, but the way they write is different. But look at the note here. Here comes from the Bart Ehrman blog. The authenticity of such specific genealogical records for non-priestly families at that time is debated, while some scholars argue they were not based on public archives, but rather on tradition or intentional symbolic creation. Everyone telling us it's a fabrication. They just don't want to tell us it's a lie. Because come on, if you open the freaking New Testament and the first text you see is a lie, what else is? Is the resurrection true? Look how funny it is. Think about this. The genealogy is a historical construct, right? A theological construct. A narrative designed with a purpose. The resurrection is factual. The same author, the same book, one thing is a theological construct, the other thing is factual. Ask any of those who might criticize and say, no, that's a fabrication. If the resurrection is a fabrication, if the resurrection is a myth. For believers, it's a fact. See how convenient lies are? That's why it's weaponized. That's why the lies are never for us. They are willing to try and paint a lie with something else. Oh, it's a theological construct. Oh, it's a myth. And myths are not lies. But the resurrection is true. The resurrection happened historically, even though we have zero evidence for that. We have zero evidence for Jesus. We have good arguments. We have circumstantial evidence. But it's still a hypothesis, meaning Jesus might have existed, Jesus might not have existed. We don't know. Nobody does. Whoever tells us Jesus existed, they are lying to you. Whoever tells you Jesus didn't exist, they are lying to you. We don't know. There isn't enough evidence. But they don't treat it this way, do they? No, that's truth. That's factual. This is the game of religion. And here, again, you open the Bible, you don't have any indication telling you it's not historical. In fact, it starts saying, this is the genealogy of Jesus. And then you read and say, Abraham was the father of Isaac. There is something more fun. So you keep reading, right? Then David, and then after the exile to Babylon. And then it ends on verse 17. Thus there were 14 generations in all, from Abraham to David, 14 from David to the exile to Babylon, and 14 from the exile to the Messiah. It's what we read on the Google AI. This is the objective. They want us the author wanted the audience to make the connection. They had a lot of things with numbers, right? So the author constructed this way. And why I say this is one of my favorite lies in the Bible. Because you don't have to go outside of the Bible to disprove it. You, if you are a believer, and you're already shaking your head with the things I've said, I mean, if you got to this point, I mean, congratulations to you. Because you can go and you can see Abraham, and then you can go all the way, check name for name, and see if the genealogy is correct. It's not going to match. In the Bible itself is denying. So now they pretend, oh, Matthew didn't lie. No. Matthew had a different objective. Matthew had a theological objective. Come on. This is what they do with lies. When they find a lie on someone, it doesn't matter the reason, right? There is no justification. A liar is a liar. You can never trust a liar. But when they find in their own holy book, then there is always a reason. There's always a justification. They always pretend it's something else. Oh, it's not literal. Oh, it's a theological construct. Oh, it's a myth. Oh, okay. How about the resurrection? The resurrection happened. The resurrection happened. It's convenience. I mean, you want to believe, go ahead. What I'm giving you is what your own holy book is telling you. You can check this with the Bible. And what you're going to do now is exactly that with the second example. I mean, I was going to give 4 examples, but come on, it's already long enough. When I realized I have spoke like 30 minutes in the first part, I was like, come on, this will go too long. What's the objective of these podcast types, right? Because I have more freedom to talk more freely, longer about the subject, while I constrain myself when I'm talking about the news. Here, Luke 24, verse 12. So here you have one gospel, the Gospel of Luke. What we are seeing happening here is that Jesus has risen. It's a subtitle of the paracle. And it's saying that the women are going to the tomb to check on Jesus, to do the post-mortem stuff. And they come back, they find the tomb empty, they come back, they tell the disciples, but they don't believe them. Look at how verse 11 is. This is important for one reason I'll give you in a bit. Verse 11, but they did not believe the women, because their words seemed like nonsense. And then verse 12. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away wondering to himself what had happened. The lie is not here. This is just a bit of curiosity for you guys. This verse 12 is believed by some, especially the non-religious ones, which I tend to take more seriously, to be a later addition to the original manuscript. The original manuscript would have ended here in the 11. The disciples thought the thing was nonsense. Then someone very early on found that, and then they added the last verse saying Peter believed in a way, he ran and went to the tomb. Now, this is very controversial. So this is not the hill I'm going to die on. The argument is, Luke is basically the entire purpose of this gospel. It's an idea out there. The entire purpose is basically to criticize the ones that had direct relations to Jesus, the eyewitnesses. and at the same time to guide the narrative towards the importance of the Holy Spirit. Why? Because Luke's from the group of Paul. Paul did not experience Jesus, even if he was real. So Paul came after the original ones. In a way, you have a position of inferiority. The objective of the author of Luke, which is not Luke, by the way, we don't even know who it is, was to basically say that that doesn't matter. Because look, the disciples thought it was nonsense that the tomb was empty. The point Luke is trying to make is only because, according to this theory, will only be concluded in Acts, which is believed to be from the same author, when the Holy Spirit descends. Now when the Holy Spirit descends, everything is the same. Everyone has basically equal. This is an idea that's out there. But this here, the verse 12, is because it doesn't appear on the oldest manuscripts, on the Western tradition, which is believed to be the Luke tradition. But it appears on the Eastern manuscripts, ancient Eastern manuscripts, which would be the tradition of Jerusalem, the tradition of, I believe it's Mark, the author of Mark. So the religious scholars try to say that, look, the text was always like this because it's in the oldest manuscripts. The other scholars try to point that, no, it's not in the Western traditions, probably because it was never there. It was in the Eastern tradition. I mean, again, the point is, right, we have this verse. I'm only giving a bit of interesting elements behind it. You can check it out for yourselves. We have this verse. Let's assume this verse is original. Let's assume it's real. Now, all you have to do is open your Bible in John chapter 20. And look, it's the same story. The women were Mary the Magdalene, then they come back, they run, they tell the disciples. And look how the story goes. Verse 3. So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple, who had already reached the tomb first, also went inside. And then we can continue reading. The same narrative. Christians will say, oh, it's interpretation. It's a different interpretation. Come on, we have one historical event. One person, which you say is real, is telling us that only Peter ran. Here, it's very clear. Peter, however, got up and ran. It doesn't tell us anything about any other disciple. Just compare the two books. One of them is lying. But it's never a lie for a religious person. You can have different people telling the same narrative. Imagine this in a courtroom, guys. Imagine one witness say, oh yes, I saw one person running. And then another witness says, oh yes, I saw two people running. One of them will say, okay, one of you is right, one of you is wrong. And because this is, I call it lie because it's intentional. These are intentional narratives. All these narratives, they are not descriptive. They are not narrating an event. They are intentional constructs. The authors had an intention in creating these texts. That's why I say, behind the intention, it might not be the only thing, but behind it, it's lies, it's manipulation, it's deceit and control. This is not a contradiction. These are two different narratives. One of them is right, one of them is wrong. Which one is it? They cannot both be right. If John is right and two disciples ran, Luke is lying. I say, oh, Luke is not lying. He isn't? Then why the other disciple is not here? Because the other disciple is John. Again, the community of John is the one responsible for the Gospel of John. Of course, they would put the one person they took as basically their favorite of the disciples as being also another one who ran. I mean, this is clear, right? So why did Luke leave it out? Oh, the witnesses that Luke was listening to this did not say, so the witness lied. The witness is not reliable. So if the witness is not reliable for here, where else did these so-called witnesses, which again, we are just believing there were witnesses. It's like me writing a book and saying, I was abducted by alien and there were witnesses. And you pick up the book and you read, whoa, there were witnesses. Whoa, it's real. It's real. There were witnesses. The guy who's writing the thing said there were witnesses. So it's real. This is basically what's happening here. Someone write, I'm using witnesses. Right? And then people believe, oh, he uses witnesses, so he's historical, it's real. No, the guy is writing that. The guy can write anything. You can write anything. So here we have two possibilities. Luke lied, or the witness he was using for, if you want to believe the narrative, he lied. Or, actually three possibilities, I don't know how to count, or the witness was not reliable. And if the witness was not reliable here, it puts into question everything. Now, John 20. So you see, Peter, and then they added the other disciple. Again, because it's for their benefit. It's a disciple they like. They are both, so much so that, look at how the narrative is constructed, guys. Both are running. But the other disciple, man, he ran fast. He ran so fast that he reached the tomb first. But God, the guy was so respectful towards Peter that he did not went in. Peter, however, Peter got there and he went in immediately. And then the other disciple. This is a political narrative. Right? These are two different communities. The community of Peter, the community of John. And what appears to be happening here in John 20 is that they are trying to make the two communities approach. So, yes, Peter, the tradition that existed is probably that Peter ran. And then they want, oh, but our guy ran as well. Here, we are talking here, the Gospel of John is believed to be the oldest, 60 years after the alleged events happened. 60 years. So while Jesus have died around 30, the Gospel of John would be written around 90 to 100. 60 to 7 years after it. So we have someone 6 to 7 years after adding their guy to the story. Oh, our guy went as well. Our guy arrived. Our guy was fast. But the guy was respectable towards Peter, so he waited. Again, there is a lie here. Actually, everything is constructed. Everything is a fabrication. But even if you want to assume truth, one of those two is lying. But for religion, conveniently, it's never a lie. Unless we find ourselves facing something like this. We arrive at the one that I will tell you comes from outside of the Bible, where you can prove the Bible lies. This is not maybe, this is not, oh, it's a myth, oh, it's a narrative. No, this is an actual lie. This is an actual fabrication. Joshua chapter 6. And you can read. I'm not going to read it all. Let me see here. Let me check something here. Oh yes, it's so long. So you can see this is the narrative of Jericho. Look, now the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. Then the Lord, guys, this is not something to be taken lightly. The author here is saying that God himself said. Right? This is not some, we are describing a historical event. We are describing an active engagement of God. Verse 2, then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast of the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse and the army will go up, everyone straight in. Look how the narrative is constructed. So Joshua, son of Nun, called the priests and said to them, take up the ark, the covenant of the Lord, and have 7 priests carry trumpets in front of it. And he ordered the army, advance, march around the city with the army guard going ahead of the ark of the Lord. And then you see that it's going to happen. Verse 12, Joshua got up early the next morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, marching before the ark of the Lord, and blew the trumpets. The armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard followed the ark of the Lord, while the trumpets kept sounding. And they did that for 6 days. On the 7th day, verse 15, they got up at the daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except that on that day they circled the city 7 times. The 7th time around, when the priest sounded the trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the army, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. The city and all that is in it are to be devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall be spared, because she hid the spies we sent. Verse 20. I'm skipping things. Check out the thing for yourself. When the trumpet sounded, the army shouted, and the sound of the trumpet, when the men gave loud shout, the wall collapsed. So everyone charged straight in and took the city. This is the narrative. I remember this because of sound, and you have this. You have people today talking about ancient civilizations, how they use sound to move stones, like, and the stones start levitating, and the stones levitate, and the stones go, and they move the stone, and they build stuff. Wonderful, right? Yes, just here's the thing, this is a fabrication. This did not happen. None of this happened. We know. Because annoying people called scientists, archaeologists in this case, they investigated. Look. When was Jericho destroyed? Archaeological evidence, pesky little things, indicates ancient Jericho was destroyed multiple times, with 2 main theories regarding its famous destruction. Conventional archaeology dates the city's destruction to around 1550 BCE, the end of Middle Bronze Age, while proponents of biblical timeline argue for destruction around 1400 BCE, late Bronze Age. Here's the difference. You have archaeology, science. The other, you have people who want to make the Bible real. So those who want to make the Bible real, I don't even know why this is here. You see, it shouldn't even be here. The Bible is not true. This is known. It was found archaeologically that the city was destroyed in a time that does not match the biblical narrative. And then you have here, look how interesting this is. 1550 BC, Middle Bronze Age, excavator, Kathleen Canyon. Guys, this is not by accident. Excavator. I mean, what the heck is an excavator? Why not call her what she was, an archaeologist? She was an archaeologist. The term that the heavily fortified city was destroyed by fire around this time. So we are talking about 150 years at least before the alleged events of the Bible. 150 years. This story, the Joshua chapter 6 that I read to you guys, happened according to that tradition. This story is from 500 BC. Okay? It's like 900 years it was written after these events allegedly happened. This is all fabricated. That's why I say this is all fabrications. There are other things that show us that it's fabrications. But even if we assume the biblical narrative right, even if we assume the biblical narrative true, it does not match history. It does not match archaeology. Here, who is Kathleen Canyon? She was a dame. Was a pioneering British archaeologist renowned for developing precise stratigraphic excavation techniques, the Wheeler Canyon method. She is best known for her groundbreaking 1950s excavations at Jericho, Tel Sultan, which revealed it was one of the world's oldest continuously occupied settlements. The woman was a serious scholar. She was not trying to disprove anything. She was just analyzing what was in front of her. And what she found was it did not match biblical narrative. And yes, there is a part here that say that it was destroyed in the 8th millennium BC. It's because it was destroyed multiple times. Destroyed and reconstructed. But the evidence that we have is it was destroyed then, and then in the times of the Bible, the narrative of the Bible, nothing, and it was destroyed after it. And I will finish this with a passage from a book from the archaeologists Israel Finkelstein and Thomas Romer, The Origins of the Torah. But it talks about the archaeological discoveries of the Bible. And this one here, this is a passage. For a long time, the archaeology of the Holy Land was divided between the wish to prove the historicity of the facts of the Bible, right? I'm mostly paraphrasing. So one side, they want to prove the Bible. They want to prove that what the Bible claimed to be historical. On the other side, the discoverers that were opposed to this effort. They didn't necessarily mean to disprove the Bible. They want to do what archaeologists are supposed to do, investigate. The results will be what they are. So in 1950s, when the British archaeologist Kathleen Canyon excavated the site of Jericho, it was verified that it had no trace of any Great Wall being destroyed around the end of the second millennium. The time in which traditionally the conquest of the nation was situated. The whole narrative of the people leaving Egypt and arriving and conquering Canaan. So the biblical narrative of the destruction of Jericho, Joshua 6, it wasn't a historical narrative, but a legendary narrative. So this is basically the breaking point, as he says here. I'm saying this because I'm basically translating. It's not in English, so bear with it. So he said that after these events that was discovered by her, basically happened a sort of divorce between those who wanted to prove the Bible and the archaeologists. So you had, he says, one side, Jewish and Christian archaeologists, who, his words here, would mostly do a very basic reading of the Bible. And they sought to use the biblical narratives as a way to explain the archaeological evidence. It's a very interesting book, I recommend it. The Origins of the Torah. And this is the whole thing, guys. So this entire narrative that tells about a city, that tells about God telling people stuff, this was all fabricated. And it was fabricated around 500 BC. So 900 years after the event would allegedly have happened. So in the end, this is a narrative with a hidden objective. At the moment you start analyzing these objectives, you realize they are lies. That's why I say the myths are lies. There is always something behind them, and they are always trying to deceive, manipulate, and control us. Well, it went longer than expected. This is the first podcast episode I recorded in a while. I have a bunch pre-recorded. But I don't know. I think this is one of my favorite ones. One of the best ones I've ever done. Because it's a topic that's very interesting for me. You see that all the time. Lies used to attack us, those who don't agree with their positions. Lies used to defend. For instance, if I tell a lie, I'm attacked because I'm a liar. But at the same thing is a defense because, oh, you shouldn't believe what he says because he's lying. He lied here. Look, we can prove he lied here, so he's a liar. You shouldn't trust them. While at the same time, when it comes to them, when it comes to their holy book, a lie is never a lie. I put three examples, guys. You find them everywhere. Everywhere in the Bible. Most of the Bible are myths and narratives constructed with these objectives. They try to pretend myths are something what they aren't, but no, myths are narratives designed to manipulate, deceive, lie to us, ultimately to control us. And that's like 95% of the Bible, some would say. The other 5%, true, historical, factual. But come on, how can you trust this? A religious person can. Because for a religious person, A lie is not a lie. It's what I said. A lie is, oh, this is your interpretation. You are interpreting as malicious. No, there's no maliciousness here. No, it's not interpreting. It's a fact. If you analyze the text, they are not caring for us. Genesis 2, for instance, the objective there is misogyny. It's just that you are trained not to see it. But if you read the Bible without this, everything that you've been told your entire life, it's pretty clear. It's right there for anyone to see. So this is not a matter of interpretation. And it's because it's a bit tiring. Again, I recommend although like this they are mostly audio, but they are mostly audio, really. Only this screen there. But the first and second episodes, after the introduction, the videos on this channel, I talk about these approaches to religion. Right? The moment you hear someone tell you, oh, this text is not to be taken literally. This text is a metaphor. This text is an allegory. This text is a midrash. The moment you hear anything other than this is literal, they're trying to manipulate you. Because they don't have an objective foundation to stand on. That's why I say the literally approach is honest and respectable. Not the contents, but the position itself. Because if you are literal, if you are literalist, the Bible is ultimate source of everything. It's in the Bible, it's true. It's in the Bible, it's real. So it's in the Bible that the earth was created in 6 days, that's true. Oh, science disproves it. It doesn't matter, it's true. It's in the Bible that slavery is institutionalized, that's true. Under God, slavery is not a sin. You have to accept everything. That's why there is no literalist. But the moment you don't have the Bible as the objective foundation, in the scientific approach, scientific methodology, but you get in the middle. You become part of the abominable approach, of the religious approach, because you don't have a place to stand on. Now, here's the thing. What makes a text literal? What makes a text not literal? If you are literalist, the Bible, and every text is literal. Every text is real. If you are not a literalist, if you are a part of the abominable approach, of the religious approach, the moment you start relativizing, oh no, this text is literal, this text is not to be taken literal. What is the criteria? You don't have it. There isn't one, other than an institution tells you. A source of authority, arbitrary, will tell you. And they are the ones who command what you should believe or not. That's why the resurrection is literal. The resurrection happened. But when you come to the Eucharist, for instance, ones who say, oh, it's symbolic, the others who say, no, it's literal. It literally becomes the flesh and blood of Jesus. That's why you have so many Christianities, so many different aspects, in many ways opposing to each other. Because the moment you lose the objective foundation, it becomes subjective. It becomes what the person wants. What you want, what your pastor wants, what their leader wants. This is what becomes. It's not serious. It's not. Because God is not you. God is a being outside of yourself. But the real reason is because God doesn't exist, and these are all made up, once again, to deceive and control us. But you are free to believe it. If you are happy, if it makes your life better, you are free to believe it. And we will end this here today. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, checking the other social media. For now, mostly X. I'm planning to change this month, but let's see how it goes. And I will see you all next time.